Alright, so on spot 59, we have a fourth episode of season 1, Lobsters on Parade. After Heatwave grows fed up with maintaining his robot disguise, Chase Blades and Boulder must battle hundreds of jagged claws when an enormous swarm of snapping lobsters overruns the annual Griffin Rock Summer Festival. So this episode is on Flatium, and I love it. There is, of course, a lot of jokes about lobsters, flobsters. I don't think we are mentioning the snails, but yes, they're called lobsters. But we also show that they are dangerous by claws. Now, the more important part, though, is that this is a Heatwave Center episode because at the beginning he doesn't want to go to the parade because he's fed up of pretending to be a robot. However, when he sees that people are in danger, he does go and actually come through, and this is why I love Heatwave's development throughout the show so much, because we see where he started and where he ended. In spot 58, we have the 20th episode of season 2, Movers and Shakers. Following an incident with a power planter during Griffin Rock's Plant 3-day event, various ants, badgers, groundhogs, porcupines, and skunks start to enter in town and they start causing havoc. Afterwards, the rescuers go up against the power planter when it starts collecting every source on Griffin Rock. So, yes, they have a Plant 3-day, the power planter goes berserk, where, of course, a lot of jokes, especially with the mayor's jacuzzi and the wild animals, which essentially break it, and they figure out where the planter is. Although I am a little bit surprised they left it running for what in the show is mentioned to be days, I think, but they got it before anyone got seriously injured, thankfully. In the 57th place, we have the 11th episode of season 1, The Return of Dinobot. An intruder hacks into Griffin Rock's central computer by using Doug Green's pet Dinobot Trex and wreaks havoc. So Trex is the dinosaur from the very first episode, then they turned it into a butler. That's what they basically call it in the show. And there is a lot of fog jokes because throughout the episode it's foggy, and then at the end we see the disaster. And this is also the episode where Morocco first appears. Although he doesn't appear directly, he is concealed because this was right before his official debut episode, but he's hinted. At spot 56, we have the 11th episode of season 3, Quarry vs. Quarry. Colonel Quarry returns in 6 additional robotic dinosaurs from Doc Green after he holds Professor Baranova hostage during a fishing picnic trip. Quint has Mr. Optimus Prime's Dinobot form for one of Doc Green's inventions, with help from Optimus Prime and Bowler. Heatwave, Chase, and Blaze transform into Dinobots with energy and patches in order to save Professor Baranova. The rest of Optimus family must find a way to rescue Optimus Prime, Doc Green, Frankie, Cody, and Rescuebots before Colonel Quarry can sell him to his clients. So this is a continuation of Big Game. So Colonel Quarry saw Optimus Prime as a dinosaur, and now he wanted more of us to recuperate his losses. And I like how in this episode Quarry blames Dr. Green because I believe Parentheses mentioned something about the Dinobot being Doc's invention, so I guess they didn't even tell Doc he was blamed for this. And the reason we go on a picnic is because Doc Green and Professor Baranova are a few episodes away from getting engaged. So yeah, they are definitely, and it is very interesting to see this more adult topic. I think we can agree it is a more adult topic, but it's a kid show, and it was really nicely handled. In spot 55, we have the 4th episode of season 3, Phantom of the Sea, where Rescuebots and Boomerang family get on the SS Phantom Voyager, a ghost ship that emerges on the west side of Griffin Rock once every 10 years. When Cody, Danny, Kate, Graham, and Rescuebots end up on the ship and it disappears to an unknown location, they find Kettle, Ansel, and Ambrose. And because of the ship's disappearance in the form of a time machine that was being transported on the SS Phantom Voyager by Dr. Morocco, and was damaged when the ship was struck by lightning, after a visit 10 years into the future, the Rescuebots and Boomerangers must find a way to get back to their own time and deactivate the time machine. So this episode will give you all the feels. First of all, I'm pretty sure it's meant to be their version of Titanic. I except it's the captain who has a sweetheart who wasn't actually on the ship, and nobody actually dies. In the episode, they mentioned that everyone was evacuated except the captain, and he was stuck in this time travel. It wasn't a loop because he doesn't go back, he keeps going forward 10 years. But the scene that will make you cry is that visit 10 years into the future. So if you didn't see that, although once again, I'm assuming if you are watching this video, you know what happens in the show. So they go into the future, and Hugh Burns is old, Doc Green is old, and Frankie is, I'm assuming, a young adult. She must be in her early 20s. I don't think she's older than that, early 20s. And she has this absolutely emotional reunion with Cody. Yeah, it will make you cry. In spot 54, we have the 13th episode of season 2, The Island of Misfit Tech. An out-of-control mechanical bull leads Cody and the rescue bots on an adventure through the mysterious beam box to the island of Misfit Technology, an island where the most dangerous technology is stored. So there is this bull, and of course they talk about technology always malfunctioning in Griffin Rock. There is also talk about how bulls reacting to the color red is a myth, but the programmer did it anyway. Although it makes sense, it's a mechanical bull, so it's of course it's gonna have all those superstitions. And then they find the beam box, which actually wasn't built by Doc Green. He says it was left over from his predecessors. It's unclear who, but it was a predecessor. And the bull gets in very bad. Cody gets accidentally dragged into the situation. And they have to find him. Kate gets stuck there. No, actually it's Heatwave first. Yeah, Heatwave goes to look for him when Kate comes, and all three actually come back with the pool, and they actually decide to give it a second chance, which is a very nice message that everyone and everything has a purpose. You just need to look for the right one. In spot 53, we have the 4th episode of season 4 plus 1. Big Shadow disrupts the leadership of Rescue Bots team when Heatwave allows her a chance to leave the team. So, the beginning of season 4, the first 4 episodes, I don't think we had any episode from the beginning, but they all go hand in hand. The events kind of directly lead one into the other, and this is the conclusion of arc where Quick Shadow comes to teach the Rescue Bots. So, she came to teach them about working alone, so to be the best version of themselves without relying on anyone else. But I would argue she is proven wrong in the end, because they only succeed at containing that harmful gas only when they are allowed to work as a proper team. Even though they do say that it was nice to be reminded to be the best version of themselves. Again, alone, solo. So I might be conflicting about that. I guess there is a bit of balance in the lesson. But my favorite scene in this episode was when Quick Shadow points out Heatwave's stance, I believe, while he is training, and everyone's reaction.
Good. Then you won't mind my pointing out your stance is off.
In spot 52, we have a 6th episode of season 3, No Place Like Dawn. When Doc Green creates a giant dome to shield Griffin Rock from Hurricane Opie, he inadvertently gives Vigil a second chance to protect the island. Now Rescue Bots must stop Vigil before he gains full control of a giant dome and makes everyone in Griffin Rock asleep for good. So this is the episode where they create the dome, the giant green dome, which also has a major role in the season 3 finale, but other than that, I don't remember if it is mentioned. Although I believe in the season 3 finale, the power sources do break, so maybe we never just fixed it. Vikil is back. I don't believe we have talked about Vikil yet, but he's essentially a computer that is too smart and wants to keep everyone safe, but essentially becomes a tyrant in the process. Although I suppose that is once again Merilatsky's fault because he didn't let Doc adjust the settings, because apparently his settings can be adjusted. And everyone except for a few of the characters fall asleep. I believe Cody, Frankie, all the four bots, and then Graham and Kate remain awake. But then Graham, Kate, and their bots become stuck, and it's up to Blades, Chase, Colin, and Frankie to bring everything back to normal, and they defeat Vikil by sending the rocket into the EMP zone. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning, we are halfway through the list. In spot 51, we have the 8th episode of season 2, Blame the Gremlins. In order to deal with recurring gremlin nightmares, Kate goes to Doc Queen, who uses a special device that manifests the live holograms of the gremlins. Graham and Nini also make fun of Kate, which does not help his nightmare situation. Then the gremlins break up and start bringing energy from different devices. Cody and Rescue find a way to rescue Kate and from gremlins. In the end, Kate's nightmares vanish, like Graham and Nini's nightmares have just begun. So the most interesting part of the episode for me is, I believe it's one of the rare times, if not the only time, when we get to hear about the 3 older parent siblings as they were kids, because they started teasing Kate about gremlins because he was the oldest brother and he was teasing them. So they decided to scare him, to teach him a lesson, essentially, which clearly comes back to bite them in this episode. And also, out of all the people, it's Cody who helps him, along with Heatwave as well. He also plays a very important part, and he's of course worried about his partner, but it was a very nice scene when he asks Doc if the machine was harmless. However, but another scene I liked is when Cody is going to Doc Green, and if he's sensing something is wrong, and he gently encourages Cody to tell what is going on, because clearly it was in a situation where he should know what is happening and should possibly intervene if necessary. So that was a very nice scene as well. In the spot number 50, we have a 90th episode of season 1, You've Been Squelched. The Doc acquires a semi-green compound with squelch from Mars and summons into life with a mild electric shock. The squelch devours anything in its path and grows progressively bigger after each meal, and it eventually rampages for Griffin Rock. Graham and Boulder apply engineering skills to hands-on experience of defeating the creature. So, this whole episode happened because Doc Green was careless and let a substance from Mars just fly around the lab, okay? But other than that, it is Graham and Boulder centered episode. They're an underrated pair. I actually love the episodes centered around them. We should see them more often. Also, Chase is devoured, and everyone is, of course, angry and want to get him back, along with everyone else who was followed, of course. Also there is a lot of engineering in this episode, mostly electricity. We kind of teach about what is alternate current, direct current. Forgive me if I use the wrong terms, I believe that's what they're called. They teach about the 2 types of current mostly in this episode, which is interesting. In spot 49, we have the 14th episode of season 1, Small Blessings. During Miles and Emma's attempt to rock Tom Green's lab, Heatwave, Blades, and Boulder are accidentally shrunk, and the Burns family must work without their partners. Was this the premiere episode for Evan and Miles? Is this where we were introduced Yeah, because I think I might have said earlier, mistakenly, but another episode was their first episode. But no, I think it was this one. So yeah, they become recurring thieves, of course. And then, of course, they work tirelessly to find the box because they have no idea what happened. They didn't even know for most of the episode they were miniaturized until Cody, who is the only one who knew what the miniaturizer was because he saw it earlier at an exhibition. He recognizes it and he explains that the bots are just small, we just need to find them, and they do. It actually has a lot of touching moments, especially mostly between Cade and Heatwave. It's mostly focused around them. I believe Haley is also introduced in this episode, Cade's girlfriend, I guess. And my favorite part was when Cody brings the fixed miniaturizer and he asks will this work, and Cody relays Doc's message that it was worth a try. In spot 49, we have the 24th episode of season 1, Rescue Boy. Dog reinvents a repulsive arch that allows the wearer to be invincible, and after he saves the mayor from danger, he's then deemed a superhero by the name Rescue Boy. Cody uses it to participate more on the front lines in missions with the rest of his family, against Chief Burns' concern of his safety. His superhero status, however, is halted when his repulsive arch is overloaded and projects a non-stop field enclosing him inside. Boulder uses counter-launching gloves, also invented by Dog to bypass the repulsive field and successfully remove the patch from Cody shortly before it detonates. Cody then announces that he has given up being a superhero. Has he? Anyway, I have a lot of notes for this episode, in fact, so this is gonna be a long segment. So, of course, first of all, this episode, the main question is one that was never really answered in the show. Will Cody ever join his family in the field? And if you look at the last episode, Transformations, we will get to that later in the ranking, but he essentially never does, I suppose. So Chief is concerned for Cody's safety, but at the same time, I understand his motivation, but he didn't communicate really well. He only blames Cody for being careless because he goes in the unstable building, but the reason Cody went into the building was good. He wanted to save Mr. Sharma. His mistake, I would argue, is going back after already safely getting out together with Mr. Sharma because he forgot his hoverboard. He goes back, and that is when the building starts to collapse. But I don't understand why it collapsed, because it wasn't unstable. It looked quite fine. It wasn't near the building that was in flames because the rest of the family was busy with fire. This is why Cody decided to go inside and help Mr. Sharma, but that building wasn't affected by the flames. So I don't really see any reason why it should have collapsed like that, unless there was a forklift that did hit some boxes, so maybe that is meant to be the reason the building collapsed. So I understand Chief's motivations, and it's good that the father wants the child to be safe, but he could have communicated better because he chastises him, and when he doesn't want to hear anything else, he just leaves, and he grants him with no room for discussion, even though there definitely should have been a discussion here. And then, after everything, so he uses the repulsor badge, but he is consistently shown to be careful with it. He uses it, he does his superhero stunts, but he is repeatedly shown to turn it off. Turn it off basically immediately after he is finished. So that is another question. Why did the repulsor badge overload in the first place if Cody was indeed shown to be careful with it, because Doggreen did warn him? Maybe he used it at full power too many times, even though he was careful. He probably used it too many times. That is possible. And the episode ends with Keith saying, "You were smart enough to solve a problem you started." Now, that is up for debate, Keith, because the problem would have not started if you actually sat down and talked with your son. If he actually sat down and talked to Cody, I don't think Cody would have called Doug Green for help. He would have not gotten the badge, and they would have not gotten in that dangerous situation. So I'm calling it Keith Burns messed up in this episode. In spot 47, we have 7th episode of season 4, Ghost in the Machine. On early Halloween night, Maz and Evan carjack Quick Shadow and threaten to expose the secret of the rescue bots. So we call it early win, and yes, they allegedly celebrated early because it's too cold in October already for kids to show off their costumes, so they celebrated early. Speaking of costumes, so Kate, Danny and Graham, they are shown in costume. Keith is not shown in costume, which makes sense. He is an adult, he is a police chief, as he said. And then the only other person who does not have a costume is the only kid in the family. Quick Shadow is back because Keith asked her to help with Harley security, but Evan and Miles want to capture her because they think she's a movie car. She scanned the vehicle that Maven Danger uses, but no good movie star, I mentioned earlier. But Evan and Miles want to steal her. They find out they are aliens, they are sentient, but we see that makes her even more valuable. That's slavery at this point. I guess the more dramatic part of the episode is when they do succeed in remote controlling Quick Shadow and Cody was inside, so they have to recover him, which is interesting because they use essentially the same formula in the season 4 finale. I don't know if this was meant to be foreshadowing or if it just happened. But that is there. And of course, the best part is the early win prank. They film a whole video to prevent Evan and Miles from revealing the bot's secret, and everyone in the town helps with that video. That is a really funny part in the episode. So, in spot 46, we have the 10th episode of season 4, All Spark Day. During All Spark Day, the rescuers have a difficult time taking care of an overtired baby, and Sissy Green has actually grown to giant size. So, this episode is actually it really tugs at your heartstring, because All Spark Day is a holiday on Cybertron. Now, I'm not sure in general Transformers lore if this is holiday in our Transformers media, but it is a holiday from Cybertron here. And the bots, of course, are reminded about home on this day. Boulder tries to celebrate, Heatwave doesn't want to celebrate because he is still sad about what happened. My only gripe with this episode is the Sissy plot. They make her giant, and then we have to chase her around town. They put her to sleep, bring her back to normal size. I feel like they could have maybe leaned more in the heartfelt direction with All Spark Day, because it begins with Cody trying to understand what the holiday is.
We're not celebrating. Earth has enough holidays of its own.
What you're working on is All Spark.
It's a painting of home. The first All Spark Day I remember.
Whoa, that looks noble.
I was looking forward to sharing some of Cybertron with you. The same way you showed us Earth.
What do you like best about All Spark Day? The fountain. I thought, what if we made the Earth version of All Spark Day?
Trying to make something nice for the bots, and they do end the episode with All Spark Holiday in the city, and in the middle you have this random baby plot. So maybe I would have changed that, but I remember that it's a really nice episode. So now we are going to tackle two spots and ones, 45 and 44, because they are the two parts of the season 4 finale. So let's begin with the first one, the 25th episode of season 4, Upgrades. Well, the rescue pods go on new missions given to them by Optimus Prime. The Morocco virus hatches a new plan to destroy them once and for all. So in the first part, they had this Scrubber initiative, which is, they say it was top secret. Even Frankie didn't know about it, even though both her parents were working on it, and this is the episode where she is allowed to know about it as well. But it was never mentioned in the rest of the season. I mean, because it was top secret, I suppose they could have hinted that there is something going on. Or I guess the intention was to leave it as a surprise for the viewer as well. Even though Frankie does say that she was wondering where Anna was going and why Doug Green was working on so-and-so. And on her birthday, because the episode started with her birthday, she finally gets access. And then they can't even tell the Burns family. But although I believe Keith Burns already knew anyway, because he says that Optimus Prime talked to him about it. And this leads us to the most important development, one of the most important developments in the history of the show, probably, is that Optimus Prime decides to end the bot's mission on Griffin Rock and to split them up in 4 different teams in order to guard the different stages of the Scrubber initiative, because they have device, let's call it, on Griffin Rock. I believe Doug Green's device was for speed. Professor Baranova in the North Pacific, was it? It's not stated very clearly where it is. It's just a vague area. She has a laboratory and she works on hive mind control. Essentially, she needs to make the Scrubber listen to their instructions. And then there is a sister laboratory in China, an island named Fuxian. And here's when we get a random character, Dr. Zito, who takes them to Fuxian so they can see their part of the Scrubber initiative. Their part is resilience, so basically they're very, very strong and too hard to stop. And that's when the bot gets leave. So Blades becomes team leader in China over Out of All the Pods, Quick Shadow, and High Tide. That was an inspired decision, certainly. And then Boulder doesn't really become a team. I believe Chase becomes the team leader of a North Pacific team, basically the team that will guard Professor Baranova. So that is Chase, Boulder, Graham also goes because Boulder goes, and Blur. Not sure how Blur would be useful in a forest. And then Heatwave remains on Griffin Rock, and I believe the intention was that he was going to stay on Griffin Rock and on the mainland center because they can move in between those two locations pretty easily. In the meantime, there is this overarching plot over both episodes. Cody says he passed his junior first responder test, which I believe is in relation to something we will talk later, but he goes to first responder summer jamboree, I believe they call it. So I believe he passed the test there, and now he is initiating a discussion with his dad about whether he can be actually partnered up with a bot. And as I mentioned in Rescue Boy, this is another instance where Keith Burns could have avoided every trouble that happened later in the episode. We'll get there. if they actually sat down and had a discussion. But as the episode goes, essentially Cody asks, Keith Burns says that, no, you're very good in the command center, we couldn't make yours without you, and leaves it there. However, we can see Cody saying that it just doesn't feel the same to him when he's in the command center. And later we do see a scene that everyone goes to Fushan except him. He is home alone, and it's also nighttime. You can see that it is nighttime. And he's sat alone, wondering what his family is doing. I wish we could have gotten more scenes like that, actually. I really liked the scene where we silently see Cody's reality. And Cody asks him again, he postpones the discussion. At this point, the bots are split, and Cody even has a stronger reason to be partnered up with a bot now, because they're a little bit understaffed now with all the bots split up across the world. And Keith once again doesn't say anything. I suppose he postpones the discussion once again. And now let's actually not yet, because there is another big thing that happens in the episode. The Morocco virus is back. Morocco left a nasty virus in the game I mentioned earlier. This is where it becomes important, the element quest. So Morocco left the virus there. The virus comes into the real world. Initially it was frozen and left on the BLF, but now it escaped. Nobody knew it escaped, and it built a second version of a Morbot. How is it only the second version? Didn't Morocco also have the original one, even a second version that breaks him out of prison? Anyway, he calls it the Morbot 2.0. Let's stick with that. And he, of course, wants to take over the mainland center, and he, in fact, succeeds because he's a virus, and we have to blow up the ground bridge in order to essentially get rid of Morocco. That's all I'll say. But the virus itself survived because it was hidden in that whole Morbot armor. It was armor for him, and so he survived. And now we can cross to part 2, which is called Transformations. It is episode 26. So the Morocco virus uploads himself into a robot, captures Cody, and controls him to do Morocco's bidding, using the golden phones from season 2, episode 6, in order to destroy the rescue bots. So the first part cuts off with Morocco taking over the mainland center. Now we need to go to fix the ground bridge. They find out the virus uploaded itself because it wanted to be like a rescue bot. The virus, to be fair, he was pretty smart for this, figuring out that he needs a human partner. Of course, we already know who he picks. And he actually, against all odds, succeeds. But the only reason he succeeds is because he finds one of those phones from Spellbound. We didn't talk about Spellbound yet. We'll talk a little bit later. Which it's realistic because they were probably also on the best left forgotten shelf, and he clearly raided the lab, so that's where he most likely found them. So this is where our discussion about Keith Burns continues. So Cody says in that brief 2 minutes of villainy, I guess, that his dad would never let him have a rescue bot. So he's clearly upset about his dad not trusting him. I believe this is what he is trying to convey, in fact. And I mean, I don't blame him because they never talk about it in part 2. The the discussion never happens. Even though Keith's parents promised they will talk about it because this is something they need to talk about, but they don't. And you know what the episode ends with? Presumably, Keith's parents discuss with Optimus, and presumably Cody as well. I'm not sure what happened because they don't show the aftermath of the virus incident, but Optimus says that one of the recruits that will learn at the mainland center will become Cody's partner. Fast forward to Rescue Bots Academy, it never happens. So, I mean, that could have been the solution, but because in the follow-up show it never happens. But what does happen is he becomes a human culture teacher. So they could have had that as an ending. I understand why Keith didn't want Cody to have a bot because he's once again afraid for his safety, but they could have said, okay, what about you can be a teacher at the academy, so you will interact with them, you will have a more hands-on role, but you will be safe. However, Keith's argument crumbles when you look at Transformers Prime, where the bots served as guardians for Raph, Jack, and Miko, who were around Cody's age when they met the bots. So that disenters Keith's argument. And of course, the show actually ends with Optimus still splits the bots up, but the Scrubber Initiative is forgotten. We get completely different missions. Graham and Boulder are going to build a sort of small town, I guess, for both humans and bots. Chase returns to Gryffindor because he was homesick and also because his partner was there. Blades remains in China. I believe he's the only one who doesn't get a new assignment. And Heatwave and Cade are assigned to the Rescue Training Center. Except in Rescue Bots Academy, since that Cody took over that role. So once again, we could have had it that Cody was the one who gets the Rescue Academy assignment. And the Scrubber Initiative is forgotten. Professor Zito doesn't appear in the second part. She has only one single episode where she appears. So, yeah, this finale overall, I like it, but there is a bit of a problem with consistency. In spot 44, we have the 18th episode of season 2, Rescue Dog. While the Force family are taking care of the Boulder Rescue Bot Save, trying to stray dog from being hit by a high tide and give him shelter at the Gryffindor Firehouse at the time when the 49th annual Gryffindor Dog Show is occurring. Following the fire at the dog show where the stray dog saves the dog owned by Nelas's wife, it is shown that the stray dog is a lost dog named Buster who worked for the Coast City Fire Department where it was lost at sea during the rescue. Now Rescue Bots must find a way to reunite Buster with the Coast City Fire Department. I'll keep it brief. This episode makes me cry basically every time, especially towards the end when Noble, because they nickname him, I guess, Noble, because they don't know what his actual name was, because he lost his tag, sacrifices himself for Priscilla. He fights off, they fight off that robot dog of Priscilla's. And yes, this episode is very emotional. In spot 42, we have episode 11 of season 4, Part-Time Heroes. Cody and Rescue Bots team work very hard at different part-time just to replace Gryffindor's communication tower. So essentially, the communication tower is finally broken in this episode. They say it was after a storm, but let's be real. Boulder literally knocked it over in one episode, so how wasn't it broken after that? So now we need a new tower. We go to Mayor Lasky, but Mayor Lasky spent all the money on an inflatable stadium because some kind of brush ball, I believe we call it, team come and they might host the championship at of course, by inflating the inflatable stadium pops. Luckily, nobody's hurt. They save everyone because the Rescue Bots and Burns family were there. And in the meantime, because Lasky spent all the money, they come up with the idea to try to save money on their own by doing part-time jobs. That, of course, fails because they're not paid nearly enough to do it, even with second jobs. And they do propose, even in the beginning of the idea, to ask the citizens for money. But Keith understands that we're not going to be very happy once they find out why they have no money. But the people end up helping anyway, so it's a really nice ending once they find out why the Burzes took this second job. So it's a really nice episode. On spot 41, we have the 14th episode of season 2 of The Vigilant Town. After some accidents, Merlasky replaces Gryffindor's computer system with a supercomputer called the Vigilant Computer that calls itself Vigil. Some Gryffindors being taken over by Vigil, who plans to make Gryffindor 100% safe. So this is Vigil's introduction episode. I already mentioned earlier that Merlasky doesn't allow Doc to fix the settings, so Vigil essentially becomes a tyrant, and we have to sneak into the lab to stop it because it starts to put people in danger instead of keeping them safe. In short, I would call this Uno reverse card for Keith Burns in relation to Rescue Boy specifically, because this is essentially the opposite lesson, but too much vigilance can be done. In spot 40, we have the 8th episode of season 4, Enemy of My Enemy. In order to save the rest of us from danger at the hands of Lord Thurston, Camley returns to Colin McQuarrie for help. So, Thurston Camley is revealed to be Quirrell's brother. It is also revealed that the lion in the Gryffindor's whiskers, I believe they called it, was raised by the Quarry family, and apparently Quinquarrie hunts, but he always releases his animal. He never actually keeps them, unlike Lord Percy, who actually keeps them in stasis, which is really creepy. At one point, he even wants to put Cody and Keith in stasis once he finds them. And this is an episode where Rescuers become dinosaurs again because they want to attract Lord Firstly, and there is also this arc with, it was Cody's idea to go to Quarry because he figured out that he has skin in the game, so to speak. In spot 49, we have the second episode of season 2, Skyforest. The friendship between Cody and Frankie is threatened, and they both enter a young inventors contest, and Frankie's Skyforest project wins. Upon realizing using special experimental fertilizer from the best left forgotten room to increase the plant growth, Cody and Frankie must work to help the rest of us stop the sentient plants. Yes, I believe this is one of, because there are other instances where they are upset at each other. They never argue, but they are upset at each other. At least in one other instance that I can think of. So yeah, they decide to compete against each other in this competition, and Frankie wins, but of course, once again, Merlasky ruins everything because he wants the forest to be a tourist attraction. He uses the fertilizer and it grows way too fast. And they have to stop it, and it's Cody's invention because he invented a sort of wet suit, a suit that sprays water. Originally it was for firemen, but ultimately they use it for this to chase away the plants with water. And he should says the thing, and this is why in the end Frankie cuts, she has her father cut the medal into, and she shares it with Cody, which is one of my favorite scenes in the show, especially the talk about the scenes between Cody and Frankie, which there is a lot of in this episode, which of course we like. In spot 48 we have a 9th episode of season 2, Feed the Beast. Whenever rescue bots hunt down a Bigfoot like beast called the Name-Rich Monster, we soon discovered that the Name-Rich Monster sightings have a connection with a synthetic, non-inspiring food called Fofu, short for Forever Food, which was among the things in the past left forgotten. They also discovered that the identities of the Name-Rich Monster are the Merlasky and Graham, all because they ate the Fofu. The Merlasky and Graham returned to normal because the rest of Burns' family did the Name-Rich Monster's dinner. Nobody is anybody's dinner in this episode, luckily. However, it is an episode actually focused on Graham and Boulder, which, as I mentioned earlier, I love these two. I wish we got them more often. Actually, Boulder manages to essentially talk Graham out of his monstrous behavior, and Graham actually ends up saving. Was it Merlasky? I think both Merlasky and Boulder. It was because he pushes them away before a crate falls on them. So that was really sweet. And there is also this plotline with Cody being shown as the boy who cried wolf. Even though he wasn't, he did indeed find something. Especially in the end, they imply that there is a Name-Rich Monster, but I'm not sure. Anyway, he wasn't the boy who cried wolf in this episode, even though they presented him that way in this episode. In spot 37 is the third episode of season 4, Arrivals. Frankie must with a new presence in the family, her baby half-sister, Cece. Meanwhile, the rest was receiving a new arrival in the form of Quickshadow. First of all, welcome to the Big Sis Club, Frankie. I really loved this episode because they showed the realistic frustration of all the scenery. Even though Frankie clearly loves Cece, but she's going to be frustrated. I mean, she loves Cece, but things can be a little bit frustrating at times. And of course, the main revelation in this episode is that Quickshadow has been trying to contact the rescue team. She's been trying to hijack their ground bridge, and now they discover her. And this leads into +1, which we discussed earlier, where she teaches the rescue bots. Next, we have another double portion of episodes in the form of a season finale. So, episode 23, Double Villainy. Dr. Morocco and Ellen Pinch conspire to not only keep the rescue bots from themselves, but also to get the call that is underneath Griffin Rock. So, who knew that Morocco and Pinch are literally an explosive duo, because explosions happen in this episode? Also, Madeline Peach wants the bots to dig gold, which I'm assuming is the continuation of Spellbound, because she wanted the gold then, and she still wants the gold from under Griffin Rock. And Dr. Morocco is working with her because he wants to sell the rescue bots. Once again, isn't this slavery? And he also tricks the Burns family with some fake rescue bots, but they figure it out, which leads us into the second part, episode 24, Rise of the Heroes, with rescue bots being mindless slaves to Dr. Morocco and Ellen Pinch. The Burns family must find a way to get their memories back before Griffin Rock sinks into the ocean from a resulting methane gas explosion underground. So, as I mentioned, explosions do happen in this episode while it is at risk of sinking. And with robots who have no memories, they convince them to work together in order to save Griffin Rock. They do it by re-inflating the tunnels. I don't know how realistic that is, but so be it, it's a cartoon. Bots do get their memories back, but not initially. There is a little bit of work involved. More like waiting, they have to wait for the memories to come back. And Morocco is actually arrested at the end of the episode, but we, of course, know he escapes. And Madeline Pinch, I forgot to say, Madeline Pinch double crosses him and she runs away, never to be seen again until season 4. In spot 34, we have the 6th episode of season 4, Vanishing Returns. Cody tries to deal with being left out by the rest, but still are in difficult position with a group of vacation resort investors that were invited to Griffin Rock by Madeline Pinch. So, as I mentioned, Madeline Pinch runs away at the end of season 2, and this is the first episode where she comes back. Meanwhile, Cody feels left out, and to be fair, yes, his family was ignoring him, and he becomes literally invisible due to some tech from Valgrox. We'll get to them later. So he discovers Madeline Peach, and he tells the family, and they actually chase the investors away, but they cannot catch Madeline Peach yet because I think she also ran away once she found out that her plan was discovered. My only note about this episode is that the family questions where Cody is. If I were them, I would be a little bit more worried knowing his track record. But anyway, it was a really nice scene where he is invisible and he overhears their discussion. That was a really nice scene. In spot 43, we have the 19th episode of season 2, Changes. Optimus Prime calls Heatwave to the mainland in order to go through an energy harnessing training for a vehicle. Meanwhile, Dr. Morocco uses the prototype Weber machine found on and Brain by Zachary's ship to cause various Weber phenomena as a diversion to find out where the rescue came from. So, as I mentioned in several occasions earlier, Heatwave goes through a lot of character development as a leader throughout the show, and this is the episode where all that culminates because Optimus calls him to the mainland to scan a third home. Here we make it out to be such a big deal, but later in the show we see that the bots have absolutely no trouble scanning. Okay, there is a little bit of trouble, but not as much trouble as you'd imagine after seeing this episode that Heatwave has to go through in order to scan that third form. Also, Dr. Morocco is back in. This is the episode where he discovers the bots are aliens because he sneaked into the fire. By the way, why didn't I have any form of security? He's right to point out that they were too trusting. Yes, that's about it. It's a really nice culmination of Heatwave's character development. In spot number 32, we reach the 16th episode of season 3, Time After Time. Cody experiences the same thing twice. It is caused by the renovated Mayerlasky clock tower, but is powered by nanofusion technology. Cody needs help discovering what is causing time movements only affecting him. I believe this is meant to be their version of a movie. If I remember correctly, it was called Groundhog Day, where the protagonist also is stuck in a loop. Although I believe it's a whole day in that movie, not 1 hour as in this episode. Although, of course, they had time limitations. Cody was surprisingly calm throughout the entire episode. He doesn't get angry at any point. He's not panicking. He's simply trying to figure out what is happening. Although you can see that as the episode progresses, he's gaining more and more fed up with this, understandably. And it all comes down to a squirrel. Although, to be fair, the squirrel caused a surge that affected Cody's new watch because he got a pocket watch which turns out to have been Dr. Morocco's. So, of course. Next, in spots 31 and 30, we have the 2 parts of the season 1 finale. Let's start with episode 25 of season 1, It's About Time. Darkwing calls the entire band's family to demonstrate testing of an abandoned time machine. He sends his half-robot Diver into the time war which takes the rescue about Scotty and Frank along with them. We are transported into the year 1949 with no discernible method of returning to the present. Optimus Prime informed by Q friends of the dilemma, and Bumblebee also traveled back to 1949 to provide their energon needed to repower the machine. All the time travels managed to return to the present, but managed to their devastation, discovered that the timeline has been altered as they had inadvertently left Diver behind in the past. So, yes, this is Rescue Bots doing time travel. They go to Briefrank 1949, which, side note, they say it's August 1949, but the Second World War began in September of 1949. Therefore, it's a very interesting detail that Morocco mentions being essentially the military war department at one point. It's a really nice detail. If you know, you will understand the reference.
And learn how this technology of the future works. The War Department would pay me hundreds.
This is I suppose mostly Cody and Frankie episode because they are the only humans who travel to the past along with the bots. We have to deal with Dr. Morocco, which they already know is a villain. And with help from Dr. Hendrickson, she is constantly mentioned, but this is one episode where we actually see her. They get back to the present, where they discover that because they left Tiver behind, they, of course, altered their present. So this leads us to episode 26, but to the future. The present-day town of Griffin Rock, renamed Monopolis, is ruled by Dr. Morocco and his Morbots. The protagonists courage the town and arrive at the Hall of Inspiration, where they encounter Hugh Burns, who, despite having no memories of them, takes them to his fire station. Morocco calls upon an entire armada of his Morbots to launch a mass attack. The Burns family retaliate with their mobile headquarters. Vehicle Autobots partake in smashing the Morbots. The group returns to the past with VMHQ when Heatwave reclaims Tiver and travel back to the present day with the original timeline restored. Hugh Burns says at the end of the episode VMHQ might come in handy, which we used it at the beginning of season 2 and then in Riders of Midwinter, so yeah, it's only shown 2 more times. Anyway, this is the more interesting episode of this season finale, in my opinion, because they, of course, have dystopian reality with Monopolis. Morocco is the dictator of Monopolis. And all this because, as Blade said, Helperbot, he built an empire on a Helperbot. Interesting, impressive. I don't know what word to use here. And Hugh Burns is not even a Hugh, he's a janitor, and he still has the older kids, Kate, Dan, and Graham, but he doesn't remember Cody, so why? You probably already know my theory if you watch my very first video. So I still stand that there may be trouble, there may be other explanations. It's a little bit unclear. On the other hand, Frankie and O'Green are implied to be living in another part of the world of Griffin Rock, probably on the mainland, which makes sense that their alternate version wouldn't want anything to do with Griffin Rock. Also, it makes sense why the bots never came to Griffin Rock or Monopolis. And yes, I believe that is it for this. So in spot number 29, we have the 16th episode of season 1, Rules and Regulations. And Heatwave leads his team into a difficult situation against Different Orders. Chase must find a way to help them by following the rules. This episode is mostly focused on Cody and Hugh Burns because they wanted to play catch, they get caught up in an emergency, and so they never do it. So to make up for it, Hugh takes Cody on his security assignment to check the EMP zone. And I really love the scenes between them in this episode. There are a lot of scenes between them, and I really like them. It's one of the few episodes where we actually get to see them spend a lot of quality time together, because usually it's not really the case with these two. And when the bots mistakenly think that they are in danger and try to save them, but they get into an potentially very unpleasant situation, let's call it, because there is a geyser and it's about to run, but luckily nobody is burned in this episode. In spot 28, we have the 17th episode of season 1, The Lost Spell. Renzo and Cody get separated from the Burns family during the thunderstorm and drift to a remote island. There, the team learns how to survive like pioneers. We also look in the pirate ship and decide that Isabel that was stolen from Griffin Rock by pirates about 200 years ago. The next morning, the team departs the island on their way back to Griffin Rock with a plan on their pirate boat, and they are able to locate and unite with the family. So the synopsis essentially said everything. There is a thunderstorm, they are preparing for the thunderstorm. Cody and the bots get separated, and they find the settler spell that is called, and the bell was stolen by pirates, and this is why it was on the boat hidden on that remote island. And they save it so that the pirates disappeared in a storm. In a storm as well, which is they think why the ship ended up stuck there, and they could never get it out, but the boats could. And there is a really sweet ending scene with Chief hugging Cody and thanking the bots, but the bots know that in fact Cody was rather self-sufficient. And then Cody and his friends from the Lad Pioneers get to ring the bell, which is really, really nice. In spot 27, we have a 12th episode of Season 2 Space Spots. Doug Green and Graham test out a space elevator called the Asgard for Professor Baranova, which will go to outer space when the experiment with Asgard goes wrong. Connie and Rest must find a way to save Doug Green and Graham Burns from being stranded in outer space forever. So yes, we build essentially a space elevator, but it's literally what they call it because we want to do experiments in space. Graham and Doc are selected to go and do the first round of experiments. And most importantly, in this episode, the bots say that they never did a rescue mission in space, which does not make sense because we've seen them patrolling. Although I suppose that is the key word, we saw them patrolling, but I suppose that the energy unit scared them before they could actually perform any rescue. So this is why this was their first space mission. Also, side note, it was really heartbreaking to see Frankie so worried for her dad. This is a through line in the episode, and Cody is also trying to keep her. Okay, he's mostly trying to keep her rescue was quiet because he knows Frankie is already stressed as it is. So that was very nice, there is also a very important part for Graham. He gains a lot of courage from this experience, and of course they come back to Earth safely in the end. In spot 26, we have the 15th episode of Season 1, the Griffin Rock Triangle. The Burns family watches film reels of the Griffin Rock Triangle phenomenon taped by Professor Anna Baranova. They embark on an underwater investigation and stumble upon the Midgard underwater laboratory trapped near an ocean front. They stop the laboratory's interior where they find Baranova, who has been inside for 28 years. Baranova initially refuses to leave her new home, but after being persuaded by Cody's reasoning to move back to Griffin Rock, detonates her laboratory. So this is Professor Anna Baranova's introduction in episode, and I love her, so very glad to see her come back to the surface. They have this is essentially mystery sort of episode because they find a clue, and that clue leads them essentially down a rabbit hole to find the Midgard. And the Griffin Rock Triangle, I believe, is supposed to be a version of the Bermuda Triangle, right? Because that is a real life myth. On spot number 25, we have the 23rd episode of Season 4, To Infinity and Back. Cody and Rest must find a way to bring Danny back from her schedule, test flying in space in Canada 1. I believe that's how we read it. First of all, this was allegedly written to be the 100th episode of the show because this is Danny's 100th test flight. However, it was apparently released as the 101st episode. There are some really emotional beats because Danny is very thankful when her family gets to space and she gets to talk to them again, which I understand. Of course, she was scared in the situation, and she was very glad to see her family, or at least hear them. This is another opposite of where Blades feels left out, and because Danny was waiting to get the job as a full-time test pilot, she does get the job, but she doesn't take it because she gets rescued 2 times because of that job, and so she decided she belongs to the rescue team. Which it's a nice conclusion, to be fair, and she is right. The company or whoever she was working for did not separate with her own family, so it makes sense that she would stay. In spot number 24, we have the second episode of Season 1, under pressure. Then Odysseus chasing humans, whereas the team arrives late, obviously because the siblings are not accustomed to alien robots, disguised as their new vehicles. They head up to the inactive volcano, Mount Magma, and work together to alleviate pressure to magma to success, but the lava is still being drained, tiles badly directed to the bunker of Hierophants. Their quarries inside. Daniel Blades fought about the tower and dumped its water to stop the lava flow. So I like this episode a lot, especially the Kate and Heatwave scene, because this episode is mostly focused on them, because they learn to even accept each other, because Kate didn't even view Heatwave as a sentient being, he viewed him as a machine, and at the end of the episode they actually become friends, even though they of course deny it. Also my favorite scene is of course the hug at the end, and Kate and Heatwave tell Cody to never scare him again, and he doesn't even know what happened. So yeah, very nice episode. Oh, and there is also a part that is intriguing to me. So Doug says at one point, that will take care of your lava problem. Doug, you're on Griffin Rock as well. This is your problem as well. How is it only their problem? In spot number 23, we have the first episode of season 1 and the first episode of the series overall, Family of Heroes. A spaceship carrying 4 members of Res 4-Sigma-17 receives a distress call from out of a leader, Optimus Prime. The spaceship self-navigates its way to Earth, a island of Griffin Rock near Maine, where Optimus Prime assigns Res Squads on a mission. Board people currently learn human customs, while concealing their status as aliens from Cybertron. Hitman grows enraged to mandate its subservience to the humans and contemplates on leaving Earth. This changes when the burns mess up and animatronic dinosaur that is attacking the island. This changes when Cody finds them and convinces them to stay on Earth. That's the truth. But I remember the episode is absolutely iconic from OP's message, when landing on Earth, the opening with Cody riding his bike and his dad's prank, I suppose.
Cody Burns, Griffin Rock PD. Please pull over.
Very iconic episode. It's a really good premiere. In spots 22 and 21 respectively, we have episodes 27 and 28 of season 3, so the season finale. The first one is Now and Then. Griffin Rock's time capsule is about to be dug up at the same time that Mulder comes to visit. Griffin Rock does its disappearing out to Arctic Circle with a quantum crystal being found in the time capsule getting struck by lightning, exposing it to a reactor. Meanwhile, Mulder's ship sinks in a storm and he meets High Tide, Blur, and Salvage upon being saved by them. So in the first part, everyone is going crazy over that time capsule because Griffin Rock has a tradition to dig one every 75 years. And the reason we find the crystal is because everything from the previous capsule was taken out by Professor Hendrickson, the same one from the time travel episode, because they found the crystal, but she was afraid it would fall into the wrong hands, and she doesn't mention it directly, but from the footage you can see that it's Morocco she was afraid of specifically. I'm curious whether this happened before or after she met Cody and Frankie, because they are ones who confirmed their suspicions that Morocco is not trustworthy. And so Griffin Rock disappears to the Arctic, which is what brings us to episode 28, Today and Forever. The Burns family doctrine and the rest of us wants to do everything we can to restore Griffin Rock back to Maine's coast. Meanwhile, Mulder, Optimus Prime, High Tide, Blur, and Salvage work to clear the hole that was left by Griffin Rock's unexpected teleportation. They eventually rally everyone on the island to work together to save the island, which gives the episode this grand feeling, which is very much appropriate for a season finale, and more importantly, it was almost the series finale, because according to an interview, Nicole Dubuque mentions that she wrote this to be their goodbye, because they did not know they are going to have a 4th season, so this was almost the season finale, which would have been okay, but to be fair, I think that we ended up getting with season 4 finale is a better farewell for the show. Also, Doug Green proposes to Professor Baranova. That was a really nice scene, and I also really loved Frankie's reaction, how she hugs Cody was really cute. The bots almost die because they give away the energon in order to push the island to its place because they have to get back the coast of Maine and align it perfectly. And they almost didn't make it. They only made it because of what sacrifice. Luckily, they are helped by, I'm assuming, Ratchet, because Optimus says they're medic and Ratchet is their only medic. So in spot number 20, we have a third episode of season 1, Hot Shots. Not that hot shot. Didn't use Raids a new scope claw in order to take a more integral part of our rescue missions. However, the pair manages to complete subsequent missions by themselves, leaving the others out of the action. Getting Graham argued with Danny about this, the rescue was threatened to remove the scoop claw from Blades. Blades goes off patrol with Danny and Cody, but are struck by lightning during the storm. The rest of the group settle with differences aside and head out to save them. What I want to know for this episode is that Danny seems to have a very similar arc to Cody throughout the show. However, it's not brought up as often. This is one of the few instances where it is brought up, but she feels left out because she doesn't get to participate in rescues as much as Kate and Graham because she's in the air. Because the arcs are so parallel, they actually create parallel between Danny and Cody directly in this episode, and Cody finally reveals Danny how she feels, how she takes his anger out on him, and Danny promises to do better. To her credit, she does. I don't believe we get any scenes where she chases Cody away like she did in this episode, because there is a scene where she directly tells him, okay, not to was example, but she basically tells him to go away, but the matter doesn't concern him. Another note about that scene I'm referring to is that you can hear Danny, Graham, and Kate arguing, and Danny says, what does that think about this? And Graham says, you know how that is. He wants us to settle this on our own. Which only goes on to add to my point that his parents is not a big fan of communication, which this family needs a lot of. But he apparently isn't really good at that, which is interesting. And at the end, of course, they're still family. We're still gonna save them despite their grievances. It wasn't even a question. In spot number 19, we have episode 20, Countdown. Doctrine accidentally releases a swarm of bags from the town's museum, the Hall of Inspiration. As the bags disperse throughout, Griffin Rock visits mysteriously disappear and are teleported to a cavern. William Franklin and Professor Anna Baronova, who explains that these bags are called tracers, programmed to protect the town's population from forthcoming cataclysm. The location of the cavern, however, has never been disclosed historically, so rescuers are forced to figure out such location in order to save the fellow citizens. This episode it's actually done in such a creepy way, because at the beginning they show people disappearing, but they use some clever camera tricks. They show the people disappearing, but they don't show why. And only later they reveal it was the tracers, and eventually everyone on the island gets teleported to that cavern. And the bots figure out that the largest cave under Griffin Rock, which was the clue, is actually a cave under the Griffin Rock statue on Mata. So that was really clever, that was enjoyable. Also, Frankie is afraid of dark, poor girl, and Cody reassures her. And this is another episode, I suppose, where it builds towards Frankie finding out about the secret. In spot 18, we have episode 18 from season 1, Bumblebee to the Rescue. The rescue pods and the Burns family investigate a meteor that has landed on Wayward Island. Bumblebee arrives at the island to join the group. Receiving directions from Optimus Prime remotely, the Autobots successfully destroy the meteor, but its particle components act as parasite, causing a paralytic effect on them. Using a meteor sample, they obtain the one's created anti-overly was set effect. So this is a Bumblebee episode. Everyone loves Bumblebee, of course. And actually, in this episode, and as you'll see later, there is another episode where Bumblebee comes. The boats, one way or another, end up incapacitated, ironically, whenever Bumblebee comes. Except that one time in All But Out. And there is of course, the scene where Cody talks to Brask about Kate does making heaven and turns out they could heaven. That is a really nice subplot. Blaze and Bumblebee become friends. This is, in fact, the main plot, I would say, of the episode. So, very emotional, very well executed. But I believe the next episode also happens to be a Bumblebee episode, and I liked it a little bit more. In spot 17, we have a 17th episode of Season 4, Uninvited Guest. When Bumblebee makes an unexpected appearance at Rescue's training center, causing problems for the Rescue team in the form of an Energon Eater. So the important note for this episode is that at this point, Rescue Bots goes in parallel with robots in the sky, so therefore Bumblebee can talk, he recovered his voice. And this is the main point of the episode, actually. Bumblebee getting used to Bumblebee's voice and their friendship being tested, but of course they come out stronger in the end because they fight the Energon Eater as a team. But I loved that, which is part of the reason I like it a little bit more than Bumblebee to the Rescue. Also, the boats one by one get incapacitated once again, as I said, a bit ironic, but that seems to happen every time Bumblebee comes to visit them. And in this episode, in Bumblebee to the Rescue, the whole family was present. Here it was only Cody because he stayed behind spent time with Bumblebee. And this is another reason why I like it, is because they had less characters, therefore they had time to develop the interactions between these characters better. In spot 16, we have the 5th episode of Season 4, Back to Virtual Reality. While playing a virtual reality game called Element Quest to find out, Cody and the rest of us team search for a way to save a real Griffin Rock from being destroyed by a virtual version of Dr. Morocco. So this is one key story of the virus. Morocco hid the virus in this expansion pack, Element Quest 2.0, and this is where the game as well comes back in a more important role. Initially, the virus acts as a real computer virus because it takes over the whole island and it makes everything Morocco's. That's how they explain it, at least. The other side of this episode is that Cody convinces Keith Burns to play the virtual reality games with him, and he actually enjoyed it. And I really loved how both Cody and Frankie, because she also plays with them, are so patient and supportive of Keith Burns, who of course needs a little bit of time to adapt to this kind of game. So that was a really sweet detail as well. In spot number 15, we have a 22nd episode of Season 2, The Griffin Rock Express. A mysterious superhero rising Griffin Rock where he saves Graham from a boulder that came off one of the mining trucks that was working over train tunnels for Have a Train the Griffin Rock Express. But he discovers that Frankie is wearing Cody's rescue boy costume and using the face bit in order to help out in Griffin Rock while the rescue bots were busy. Things get worse when the Griffin Rock Express malfunctions and it becomes a runaway train. Wait, what was Cody's costume? I mean, we look the same, but I didn't realize it was the same costume. Was it supposed to be? I like that Frankie was more careful back when she actually concealed her identity, probably because she saw what happened to her best friend, who didn't conceal his identity. Also, she actually gets to keep the device that helps her be a superhero. She calls herself Rescue Girl, by the way. Rescue Boy, Rescue Girl, of course. She actually comes back once again. I think I forgot to mention it in the last episode of the show. In Transformation, she comes back and she actually saves Cody during that episode as Rescue Girl. Also, they raise a legitimate question. Why do the Burns have to dig up the tunnel? Because of Mayor Lasky, of course. In spot number 14, we have the 6th episode of Season 2, Spellbound. The Bots and the Burns family army mind controls 2 birds and confining a strange golden cell phone. Then the rest of the town is affected as well. Cody and Boulder scramble to stamp them out of it before they're sucked in. They were supposed to be gold. I guess it makes sense because they were digging gold, so it's clever detail. Regardless, This episode lures you in with the promise of a cozy family episode with the whole beginning, and Blossom Eva was really cute, I loved it. And then it descends into outright horror. Keith gets hypnotized by a color phone after he and Cody are eating ice cream, which is the last thing he remembers before getting hypnotized. Then he gives phones to the other kids, then the whole town is hypnotized, and somehow throughout all this Cody is the only one who's not affected, so plot convenience. Which is one of the reasons why, even though I like this episode so much, it didn't make it into top 10 because there is a little bit too much plot convenience for my liking. Also, the idea of the episode, it gets a tiny bit tuned because you'd think at the beginning there is a lot of interaction between Cody and his hypnotized dad, so you'd think that's where they are working towards some kind of confrontation, but never happens because Boulder swoops in again. It's too much plot convenience. So Boulder simply smashes his phone and he happens to be freed again. And this episode is not in top 10 because it could have been better. They had so much potential, but we didn't use it. For example, as I mentioned earlier, Cody versus Keith Burns, that would have been very interesting to see. Or there is a scene where Frankie betrays Cody, and I think she even does it twice, even though one of the times was off screen. She betrays him, but doesn't go anywhere. So why didn't they have maybe Cody saving Frankie, and they could have very easily go to the lab and work from there. I know we are limited for time, but there is things that they could have definitely done better within this amount of time. But don't get me wrong, I still like this episode, which is why it's so high. It's still on place 14, which is not low. Next, in spot number 13, we have the 19th episode on season 3, The Last of Morocco. Frankie has been accepted by a summer science camp, but Cody wasn't. Cody, Frankie, and Blaze encounter Jules Verne, who has traveled through time to find his old friend Dr. Thaddeus Morocco. The rest of us, Burns family high tech, help Jules Verne find an age Dr. Morocco, where he wants Jules Verne to help reconstruct the Verne device to power his youth chamber. When Jules Verne doesn't want to help after hearing of his criminal activities, Dr. Morocco uses force to get used to help him by using a control device to control some sperm whales and a giant squid in the attacking high tide's ship. So Jules Verne is in fact a real personality, which they reference here, although they say it's a Jules Verne from before he wrote books, because again, in real life he is rather famous. He wrote the story about circling the Earth in 8 days. The title escapes me, and then the one about the sea, again, titles escape me right now, but he is rather famous. And apparently in this universe he was friends with Morocco, and they parallel this with Cody and Frankie. They make a very strong parallel because Frankie was accepted to the camp, but Cody, and she suggests he can take additional courses. She in fact asked the camp director, and the reason she gets upset with him is because he doesn't want to take the course because he's busy with the rescue team at this point. And she gets upset with him, and he is one who ends up apologizing because he sees what happened to Morocco and Jules Verne, and he makes amends. Speaking of which, this gave birth to one of the wildest jokes in the show, I would argue. Frankie basically teases Cody and says, "So you think one of us is going to become a villain?" And Cody's like, "No, not that part. Are you sure, buddy?" Next, in spots 12 and 11 respectively, we have yet another two-part episode. episode 12, the more things change, and episode 14, the more things stay the same. So it's supposed to be one phrase, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Let's begin with part 1. Cody and Rescat's team have a difficult time with the mainline training center. So they finally are ready to open the training center, which has been the focus of season 4, and now they are finally finished building it, and they give a grand tour before opening it. Except Elma, their holographic assistant, malfunctions and essentially ends up trapping some of the cast inside, which leads to episode 14, the more things stay the same. Quite a was team attempts to save the mainline training center from being discovered. So aside from the malfunctioning assistant, they have projectors which hide the training center, so nobody can actually see it, but now the projectors are burned, and we need to replace them, but that is hard because they are locked inside. And Danny also has to try to delay a flight because a whole bunch of planes are about to fly over the training center, and they are panicking because it's going to be photographed and investigated subsequently. Another through line of both these episodes is that the rescue bots were actually planning to move into the training center. But at the end of it, so after all is said and done, they decide to stay at the firehouse. But shortly, because as we know, Optimus divides them anyway. So that kind of begs the question why we didn't have them move in, and then that would have led very nicely into the season finale of them being actually split up. But I guess it's a nice message here too. And now we are starting to count down top 10. So first is, ironically, the 10th episode of Season 1, Deep Trouble. A shark targeting high-tech caution equipment is spotted off a Griffin Rock shore. It wasn't a real shark, it was a submarine, a self-driving submarine, which it's pretty clear was built by Morocco, and we'll talk a little bit later why he did it, because this is part of an overarching plot throughout the first half of season 1. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But yes, Doc Green is of course having trouble, especially from the mayor, because this shark destroys his equipment, and that causes trouble to the mayor, and the mayor causes trouble to Doc Green, of course. I really love how they go on this fishing trip, and Chief Burns, at Cody's suggestion, agrees to invite the bots as well, so they go together. The older kids stay back home because they find it really boring, but after reminiscing on some fun memories, they decide to go anyway to meet them and the dogs, only to be mad with the screaming Chief Burns, because he wasn't screaming, and then he thought there was a person in the submarine. Speaking of that, Maurice LaMarche ate in that scene. And final conclusion, this is where season 1 got really good. As I mentioned earlier, this is the beginning of an overarching plot, which we'll talk about a bit later. Actually, it's not so much later, because in spots 9 and 8 respectively, we had episodes 12 and 13 of season 1, The Other Doctor and The Reign of Morocco. Let's start with The Other Doctor. A scientist named Dr. Morocco introduces his latest invention, the Marbot, which saves the town from disaster but also leaves everyone else out of the action. Dr. Morocco successfully convinces Miles Key to decommissioning the rescuers in favor of his invention. So this is where the overarching plot I've been mentioning culminates, because first there is the nanites, which were mentioned earlier. Those were left by Dr. Morocco. Then he causes trouble to Doc Green in Deep Trouble with the submarine. Then he gets Doc Green fired in Return of the Dinobot, and now he comes to claim the coveted position of lead scientist in Griffin Rock. And of course this is the Monobots debut as well. Actually, the way Morocco does this is he convinces the mayor to do a rigged competition, which he, of course, wins because it was rigged, which leads us to the reign of Morocco. With Rescue no longer allowed to save the town, Dr. Morocco terrorizes the town with his invention for the purpose of killing revenge when Charlie burns the Queen Emily Lasky. Rescue take a new hobby during their downtime. Meanwhile, Connie and Frankie manage to find evidence at the Screen's laboratory, proving that Dr. Morocco's invention has all been part of a villainous plan. So, of course, the bots are decommissioned and they are contemplating leaving Earth because they have no more work. And this is a big part why Cody and Frankie were wanted to find proof, of course. Another part was that Doc Green was contemplating moving to the mainland as well, and of course Connie and Frankie didn't want to be separated, so they worked together to find proof. And they find out from Dr. Morocco directly that yes, he indeed wants revenge, which begs the question, what exactly happened between Keith Burns, Doc Green, and Dr. Morocco, because there is clearly backstory, but they never go into it. Oh, my potatoes are ready, excuse me. As I was saying, it begs the question, what exactly happened between Dr. Morocco, Keith Burns, Doc Green, and apparently also Mayor Lasky, because Morocco wants revenge on all three of them. They even go as far as almost mentioning what happened, because Mayor Lasky even hesitates to mention the incident, and Morocco, of course, brushes off, so they don't say that happened but my suspicion is that it has something to do with Mrs. Burns. In spot number 7, we have building bridges. One bridge malfunction splits the entire rescue team apart. Meanwhile, the inhabitants of Reform decided they should let the rescue live amongst them or not. First of all, I love a double meaning for a title, because they are building bridges literally and also metaphorically. Love it. The town wasn't really that hesitant to let the bots leave on Griffin Rock. Milo was, of course, against it, but then everyone voted to let them stay behind and also keep their secret. Of course, under the threat of the infamous Mr. Pettipaws. And I loved that part. It was really nice. Also, they have a stint in the Sahara, where they see Quick Shadow, but they believe she is an illusion. She wasn't, clearly. So, yeah, building bridges. In spot number 6, we have the first episode of season 4, New Normal. 3 years after the end of season 3, an alien attack by the Velcros forces Red Squad to expose themselves to the citizens of Griffin Rock. First of all, I should mention that this episode goes pretty much hand in hand with bridge building. But again, I said even earlier that the first 4 episodes are basically one overarching arc. You should watch them together. And I love this season premiere. They've had a fake alien invention, now they have a real one. The Velcrox evidently have history with Cybertronians as well, but they never explain what exactly. And the rescue bots are forced to reveal their identities as a result, but they were thinking about it anyway, because they get this mission from Optimus to build the NS Center, so they need the help of everyone else, and that is why they are thinking of revealing their identities, so it would be easier. It's never actually mentioned if people from Griffin ever help building the training center. I mean, obviously Burns is it, but it's unclear whether anybody else did. Regardless, I love this episode. It's a very, very good season premiere. In spot number 5, we have the 21st episode of season 4, Cody's 11. What if Burns and Rescue Squad's risk life and aim to save both stolen technology from a limiting human energy, which she has turned into batteries? First of all, Cody's 11, if you didn't know, is meant to be a pun on Ocean's 11, which is a famous spy movie, and this episode is Rescue Bots Can Spy, and I love it. So Madeline Pink is back for one last time because she's finally arrested at the end of this episode. She finds out the bots are aliens, but she is arrested on Griffin Rock, so she can't do anything with that information because people of Griffin Rock at this point already were well aware of the bots. I've seen some people say how Hugh Burns literally committed a crime breaking and entering. Because this is a cartoon, I don't know if you should go into the actual legality of it, but let's be real. Don't you think you would have fought to get search warrant after Spellbound once you found out she was behind it? Because we clearly know she was one behind the Spellbound incident. And also behind a bunch of other things as well. Of course, the explosions which almost sank the island. So I think he would have fought very hard to get a search warrant to arrest her. By the way, she had an arrest warrant that is confirmed in the show because Lasky says that if she came back on Griffin Rock, she would be arrested. So she clearly was had a search warrant out for her. And yeah, I just love this episode. Spot number 4, we have the 4th episode of season 2, Tip of the Iceberg. An iceberg brings danger to Griffin Rock. Rescue Bots and Burns family find the SS Isolda, which was driven by Cody's great-grandpa Zachary, and there is some cargo that is being targeted by Dr. Morocco. First of all, I don't know why, but I find this episode very cozy, even though ironically it's literally about a frozen ship, but I like it. It's very well executed from Morocco coming back. He convinced the mayor to let him off the hook. Also, he ends up stealing the Isolda, which is the ship of Hugh Burns' grandfather. Zachary Burns, I believe his name was. I think the reason why I find it so cozy is because Cody finds the log, captain's log, and there are some scenes where he reads that log, and it's done in a very, very nice narrated, so maybe that is part of the reason why I find this episode so cozy. And in the end, there is this very interesting scene where they have hope for Morocco. Of course, we know what happens. His memory gets erased in the end, and that's how he is reformed. He actually does get reformed, shockingly. Alright, everyone, now we are in the top 3. So, the bronze medal goes to episode 9 of season 3, The Riders of Midwinter. You can't see the guy, there he is. So, the Rescue Bots take on new responsibilities during a terrible snowstorm. So, in this episode, the main plot is that they have a specific holiday for Griffin Rock, the midwinter morning, where they have a mysterious rider leaving bread after very bad snowstorm where the island was isolated and we couldn't even get food. But it's actually a pretty dark origin story. And the point of a holiday is for people to remember that act of selfless kindness, but of course they sort of start forgetting everyone wants presents, and it turns out that the current writer of Midwinter was Mrs. Niederlander. Makes sense. And now the Rescue Bots and the Burns family are the writers of Midwinter because Miss Niederlander understandably is getting old and she needs to pass on the torch to somebody else. And so I loved the message how the holiday season in general, it's not about presents, it is about family, it's about this warm feeling, eternal combustion. And as a bonus, we get a banger of a song, Light the Fire. The silver medal, spot number 2, goes to episode 22 of season 1, Little White Lights. The kids are covered planning a surprise birthday party for their father. Hugh Burns tells them he's heading to the dogs, but actually takes a trip to the bakery for cake as a present for his family, thinking that they forgot his birthday. He has discovered this to be lying and is confounded by this. While setting up the party back home, the kids and Barbaras will realize that Jason and Hugh Burns are missing and start to paint our town. Eventually, they discover the trapped inside an underground mine and save them from the falling water and falling rocks. First of all, I like that this is essentially a subversion of the surprise party trope, because usually, as far as I know how this trope goes, the character thinks everyone forgot and they get upset about it. But here, the father wasn't upset, he gave them the benefit of the doubt. He knew they were busy, so of course he wasn't mad at them. Of course, they didn't forget they were planning a surprise party, which was really, really nice. And this is a give and chase focused episode, which we don't get a lot of, to be fair. So it was really nice to get such a good episode for them. And the lesson, Little White Lights, it's actually a really complicated one. Especially for a kids show, it's really interesting, and I'm glad they had an adult as the focus of this episode. Yes, I don't really have any complaints for it. I love the episode. Now, if you've been paying attention, you will already know which episode won the gold medal. So, my favorite episode of Rescue Bots. In the first spot is episode 24 of season 4, Family Business. Cody rides around with each of the bots to decide what kind of rescue worker he wants to be, but when a member of his family is in danger, Cody's true calling becomes clear. This is a really well executed episode. No notes. Literally, they first go a little bit deeper into what each of the family members does. First, they take him along, and the difference between not in the episode is that they let him actually participate so he can understand what he likes to do. And it starts very light-hearted, like there are a lot of jokes with the siblings fighting over what Cody is going to choose, and Cody, it doesn't help Cody's case, of course, because he doesn't know what he wants to do yet. And then it starts transitioning into something a lot more serious. So essentially, earlier in the episode, they show that there is some construction going on. They end up accidentally sending fire to a gas pipe, which explodes, essentially destroying a block of flats. Nobody was hurt miraculously. But of course, it's a kid show, that's why. However, they have no other place to go. They were left at homes, which is terrible. So, Hugh Burns, despite Hugh Burns, he was preparing to go on vacation. Poor guy, first he wanted to retire. He didn't retire because the boss revealed their identities. Now he can't even take a vacation without disaster striking. So they host essentially the refugees in the firehouse, which I absolutely loved that part of the episode. It was really heartwarming. And then they ask around to see what each of the refugees needs. They go back to the unstable block of flats. Of course, the bots are there and everyone is there, so to do it as safely as possible, they are trying to do it as safely as possible, but it was still an unstable building. And so Keith is a member of a family who ends up in danger. The member of family mentioned in the synopsis. And I swear to God, but I remember very distinctly, I believe I was 13 or 14 when I first saw this episode. And the way they play Matsu with the music and everything, I swear to God, I thought they were actually going to kill him. They didn't. Again, probably because it's a kid show. It all ends well, but before before that, we get a very interesting scene from a character standpoint, because we see how each of the kids react to grief. They're essentially preparing to grieve because they have no idea whether their father will make it or not. And so that was a very good character scene. I mean, it wasn't a good scene in the sense that they were, of course, sad. It wasn't a good scene from that standpoint. It was a good scene from a writing standpoint, because we get to see the characters in this situation, which helps us learn more about them. So essentially, from what I gathered, Cody was just quiet, which makes sense. He was probably just scared. Danny was comforting him. She was doing her best. Graham was, of course, spiraling because he blamed himself for not checking the billing, and then Kate reassures him it wasn't his fault. And by the way, Kate also very clearly realized that if God forbid something does happen to their father, he is left in charge, which he loves to joke about it, but he understands it's a huge responsibility to do it. Of course, Kif's parents makes it out alive. It's a very sweet scene. They reunite, and then the rest of the town goes to greet Kif's parents coming out of the hospital, which was also Blaze literally cries, and so did I think so did I when I first saw the episode. It's a really emotional scene. And the conclusion, remember, the whole point of the episode is Cody choosing what he's gonna do, right? He says that he wants to follow in the footsteps of his father, but he didn't mean law enforcement. The message of the episode is that no matter what he chooses, he needs to do his best at it, and also lead with compassion and remember why he's doing it in the first place, which I guess was a nice reminder. However, if you're curious to find out what he actually chose, because they don't say it in the episode, but basically it was good for something and they actually revealed it, he allegedly chose to be an EMT, basically what Dane does. So he would likely be in a helicopter. He basically chose to do what Dane does, if you were curious to find out after that big ending. I ranked all 104 episodes. So this was a huge project, but I'm not gonna lie, I feel very rewarded after it. It feels very rewarding. I hope you like this video. I hope you can see that I put a lot of work into it, and I hope you enjoy watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Of course, I would be curious to hear what your favorite episodes are. Of course, you don't need to write down in the comments all the episodes. Maybe just the top 10 or maybe top 3, whatever you fancy. That said, if you like this content, I hope you will subscribe. Of course, leave a like. And as I mentioned earlier, don't hesitate to leave your opinions about what episode is your favorite, because I'm actually genuinely curious to hear about what the fandom likes and doesn't like. Of course, we all have our own opinions, but we have to agree to disagree. So please be civil in the comments if you're gonna start discussing which episode is better. That's it. This is it for now. Bye.